Hello, I'm Alex, and welcome to the History Chronicles. If you like our work, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel in return for exclusive perks, please visit our Patreon page. Now, on with the video. Who took part in the Battle of Little Bighorn, and how did it shape American history? Let's find out in today's episode of the History Chronicles. Today's History Chronicle begins in 1868 with the events that would lead up to the Battle of Little Bighorn. The Second Treaty of Fort Laramie followed the failure of the previous one in 1851, and would be the cornerstone of negotiations between the Lakota bands of the Oglala, Miniconjou, Brule, the Yanktonai, Dakota, and the Arapaho. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 would establish the creation of the Great Sioux Reservation, including territory such as the Black Hills, a sacred and small mountain range in western South Dakota. It was also decided in this treaty there would be no white settlers permitted on the Great Sioux Reservation. The only permitted white men would be government officials. Despite these promises, white settlers began to flood into the Black Hills as the rumor of gold encouraged fortune seekers to take the risk. Even the government began to break the treaty agreements by sending an expedition under Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer on the 2nd of July 1874. The major objectives were to establish possible locations for a military fort, a route to the southwest, and to search for possible gold mines. The army would set up camp at the future town of Custer, just northwest of Wind Cave, the location which the Lakota people claim in the origin story of their people. Whether or not there was any serious discoveries of gold is inconclusive. But as a result, white settlers began to flood into the area, greatly infuriating the Lakota leaders. This great influx of white settlers was in part due to the Panic of 1873, an economic collapse that shook the confidence of the markets, leading to increased efforts in gold speculation. As a result of the economic collapse and the increasing number of white settlers being evicted from the Great Sioux Reservation, political pressure began to be applied towards President Ulysses S. Grant's administration. At the same time, a delegation of Lakota leaders under Spotted Tail, Red Cloud, and Lone Horn in May of 1875 visited Washington, D.C. in an attempt to dissuade the Grant administration from breaking their treaty promises. Ultimately, their efforts to stop the United States encroachment failed. Later in 1875, the United States sent government officials to the Lakota reservations in an attempt to persuade the general population to accept the treaty, but this also failed. In an effort to pressure the Native Americans, Congress threatened to withhold food supplies. The result of this ultimatum was the launch of a revolt of 50,000 Native Americans by 1876. The Department of the Interior, under the direction of Zachariah Chandler, demanded the hunting grounds be abandoned and the Lakota confined to their reservations by the 31st of January 1876. Lakota leaders such as Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and other leaders refused. In response to this, General Philip Sheridan began planning a campaign in Chicago to contain the Lakota in the reservation. 3 separate columns would be needed in order to achieve this, as General George Crook would depart from Fort Fetterman in eastern Wyoming, marching to the east, along with Colonel John Gibbons, who had a longer journey from Fort Shaw in western Montana. Lastly, Custer would travel west from Fort Abraham Lincoln in North Dakota. General Crook would leave Fort Fetterman on the 1st of March 1876 and would be hampered by heavy, freezing winds, while Lieutenant Colonel George Custer was delayed by the snow. On the 17th of March, a detachment under the command of J.J. Reynolds encountered a Cheyenne-Oglala Lakota camp. In an effort to capture the Native Americans' pony herd, the 2nd Cavalry engaged the camp at the Battle of Powder River. For 5 hours, the American soldiers faced heavy opposition, only to retreat from the battle. The Native Americans recaptured the majority of their horses, while the Americans suffered only 7 casualties. General Crook decided to return to Fort Fetterman as a result to re-equip. But this minor battle damaged the Americans' reputation, driving more natives to Crazy Horse's retinue. Despite the losses the Native Americans suffered in terms of shelter, food, and equipment. General Crook would leave Fort Fetterman in May with 1,000 cavalry and infantry, along with 250 Crow and Shoshone Native American scouts. By mid-June, Crook had entered into the Bozeman Trail and encountered Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. A squadron of the 3rd Cavalry Division under the command of Captain Anson Mills attacked the Lakota village on Rosebud Creek, but had to be extracted with the help of the 9th Infantry. They were pursued by nearly 6,000 Native Americans and engaged the main army under Crook, resulting in a 6-hour battle. Crook would have surely been defeated had it not been for his Native American allies, the Shoshone and the Crow, both natural rivals of the Lakota. The Lakota retreated, yielding the field to Crook, who suffered 28 casualties and 56 wounded, while Crazy Horse lost 100 men in battle. This battle meant Crook would be unable to support Gibbons and Custer, while support for Crazy Horse once again increased. Following the Battle of Rosebud, the Confederation of Native Americans gathered by the Little Bighorn River. This confederation included the Northern Cheyenne and numerous Lakota tribes, including the Brule, Oglala, Yanktonai, Santee, Miniconjou, Sanzark, and the Hunkpapa. The two remaining columns under the command of Major General Alfred Terry and Colonel Gibbons would converge 4 days after the Battle of Rosebud. Major General Terry dispatched Custer after a scouting party under the command of Major Marcus Reno had located the position of the Native American camp. The combined Northern Cheyenne and Lakota camp was massive in size and included over 1,000 lodges, which used anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 buffalo, elk, and deer hides. The encampment also carried a combined 20 tons of dried meat and dried fruits and vegetables, not including the approximate 2,000 pounds of fresh meat, along with 4,000 gallons of fresh water every day. The food to feed the pony herd alone was anywhere between 100 to 150 tons of hay per day. The encampment is estimated to have housed 8 to 10,000 people, with an accompanying 10 to 15,000 ponies. Due to the sheer size of this encampment, members such as Sitting Bull knew they would not be able to stay long in the region due to the high demands on the local resources. The location of the encampment was not selected randomly by Sitting Bull, the main Lakota leader of the camp, as the Little Bighorn served as a sacred site for the Winwanyang Wakipi, or the Sundance. Sitting Bull believed the encampment would be safe from the United States Army, unaware of the attempt by the army to pincer the encampment. He wished to gather the leadership in order to better formulate a plan to defend the land from both the United States Army and the encroachment of white settlers. The encampment had originally been located southeast near Ash Creek, when there had only been a couple of hundred people. But as they grew into thousands, they needed to move to the Little Bighorn River, as the pony herd had depleted their grazing grounds. On the 25th of June 1876, Custer divided his command into 3 separate columns, with Captain Frederick Benteen leading 3 companies to scout to the left and prevent any escape. Major Marcus Reno was sent with 3 companies across Ash Creek to charge along the southern side of the Little Bighorn. Meanwhile, Custer would take 5 companies towards the center of the camp. Major Reno began the battle at 3 p.m. as his attack commenced on the southern end of the camp. While Major Reno believed he had the benefit of the element of surprise, the lone Lakota had spotted the dust clouds in the horizon from his column and had arrived minutes before the first shots were fired on the camp. 2 women were the first casualties of the Battle of Little Bighorn, and happened to be the wife and daughter of the Hunkpapa Lakota war chief, Gall. As Gall would say after the battle, these casualties led him to fight like a, quote, wounded bear, and he would play a crucial part in the second half of the battle. The location of the Battle of Little Bighorn proved to be disastrous for the 7th Cavalry, as Reno had to charge over 2 miles of open ground with no cover. This was made even harder as the cavalry had been forced marched for nearly 2 days in order to engage the Lakota and their allies. When Major Reno created his skirmishing line, he had lost any chance of success. When his soldiers dismounted, every 4th soldier gathered 4 horses and held them, leaving roughly 30 soldiers unengaged in the conflict. As the Hunkpapa counterattacked to allow the women and children time to escape, Gall attacked the western end of the skirmishers, breaking them immediately. Reno, understanding he was significantly outnumbered with no support, retreated into a cottonwood grove. This provided cover, but limited their field of fire. But Reno found the situation untenable as the Hunkpapa continued to break through his defenses and retreated across the river. This was another mistake, as the crossing was difficult, leading to a situation where the opposition had an overwhelming advantage over the soldiers. Those who did make the crossing began to dig into the bluffs, but Reno had lost nearly half his command at this point. They formed a defensive position, but once again the land was suited towards the Lakota as they spread out in the gullies which offered protection. The soldiers were pinned in and attempted to break out, but they were pushed back. This officially ended the Valley Fight, as it would come to be known. Major Reno would be reinforced later by Captain Benteen with reinforced rifle pits. Yet, ultimately, the Hunkpapa deemed them no longer a threat to the village. Meanwhile, to the north, as Reno was being chased, Custer was positioning his 5 companies behind the ridge that overlooked the camp. He only caught a small portion of the camp, as the cottonwood groves obstructed the entire view of the encampment. Due to the distance between Custer and Reno, it is safe to assume he believed Reno had continued his attack and had not been pushed back. So, Custer proceeded along the Medicine Tail Coulee, guided by his Crow and Arikara scouts, and sent a scouting party for a location to cross. This was a costly mistake, as defensive fire halted the scouting party, surrendering the element of surprise for Custer. After the initial contact with Captain Reno's companies, Gall had suspected that Custer would attempt a two-pronged attack, and therefore had begun searching for them after pushing Reno across the river. Along the ridge, Custer's men had formed a skirmishing line to slow the approach of the warriors, but this failed as the return fire from the Lakota was too much for the soldiers and they broke their ranks. As they were trained, the soldiers maintained the high ground, yet it did not yield any advantage for them. They were flanked on both sides. The remaining soldiers, only 50 out of the original 210 men under Custer's command, continued their retreat to the spot now known as Last Stand Hill. In reality, it wasn't a hill at all, but the edge of the ridge, and there was simply nowhere else to go. Crazy Horse arrived following his western river crossing, blocking any chance of escape for Custer. Once Custer and his men had formed a defensive position, Gall issued his best warriors to snipe the last of Custer's men. The following day, the remnants of Reno and Bentine's forces remained in their positions as the Lakota and their allies left the area and prepared for another assault on their position. They had no idea what had happened to Custer, and it wasn't until the 27th of June that they learned of what had happened. Lieutenant James Bradley informed them that Custer and his men had been slaughtered just to the north at Last Stand Hill. Most of the men had been stripped of their possessions and ritually mutilated, and Custer had been shot once in the left side of the chest and once in the head. Modern analysis indicates Custer was killed by the shot to the chest and that he bled out, and the shot to the head was post-mortem. Historians have tried to consolidate the events of the Battle of Little Bighorn to better understand how it transpired, but many of the events from the second phase of the conflict are mired in the fog of war, as none of the men under Custer's direct command survived. Much of the information regarding Custer's last stand is provided by battlefield analysis done after the battle, along with Native American accounts, though these were done years after the events of that day. The exact numbers of dead are unknown, but as an estimate, 30 to 300 Native Americans might have perished, while the 7th Cavalry lost all 215 men under Custer, along with an additional 47 who were killed under Reno's command. The loss at Little Bighorn shocked the nation and enraged the public, who wanted Custer's killers to be brought to justice. In an effort to avoid the patrolling soldiers, the Lakota split their camp into their respective tribes. The defeat baffled military leaders as to how the supposed backwards Native Americans defeated the supposedly technologically superior American army, although this ultimately was not entirely true. Most of the 7th Cavalry were issued single-shot rifles, compared with the Native Americans who had acquired many repeating rifles, allowing them to consistently put pressure on Custer's men. Custer also refused to take a battery of Gatling guns, which would have surely helped them with the numerical disadvantage of Custer's 650 men versus the combined Native American force of nearly 2,000. Not only were the men of the 7th Cavalry outgunned and outnumbered, but their leadership were arrogant about their ability to overpower the Native Americans, and Custer is often seen as the one to blame. Though as a whole, the American military were slightly naive in believing that the Native Americans would be easy to corral onto reservations. After the defeat of Custer, the army would change their tactics and focus on disarming friendly native tribes and confining them to the reservations. Once completed, they would starve the rebelling Native Americans into compliance by denying food and aid, tactics which worked at quelling most of the rebels. Ultimately, by 1877, the official war was over. Dull Knife and Standing Elk surrendered at Red Cloud Agency on the 21st of April 1877, while Touch the Clouds and Roman Nose surrendered at Spotted Tail Agency. Crazy Horse surrendered on the 5th of May 1877, while Gall and Sitting Bull escaped to Canada to continue their resistance, although they would return to the United States and be arrested in 1881. The Great Sioux War, as it would be known, was one of the last major conflicts of the American Indian Wars, and with it, the Battle of Little Bighorn was the last major defeat of the American army at the hands of the Native Americans. You have been watching the History Chronicles. We'd love to know what you think of the Battle of Little Bighorn. Please let us know below, and if you enjoyed our video, please give us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Also, if you'd like to support our work going forward, please visit our Patreon page, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of the History Chronicles.